This is my third edition of Ultimate Questions, Thinking About Philosophy by Nils Raught. In honor of Masamune Rainmaker 1987, with all my thoughts, J. Why we must preserve knowledge in all forms. Why you need to know this new edition? Well, it needs updated. And also, it still matters. Ultimate Questions with notations by Janelle in honor of those who have honored her. Please recycle this edition and pay it forward. Should we not, the knowledge we obtain will be forever lost. J. I've already read this on several different accounts. I already have permission to do this. There is a website that you can log into to take a class with me. And one of my subscribers, I will donate this book back to them. This is Ultimate Questions, Think About Philosophy, 3rd edition. The original author is Nils Raught from Coastal Carolina University. I took this class at Owens. Tip content, we're going to skip ahead. I'm going to skip through my notations. Preface. An introductory philosophy class confronts both students and teachers with unique challenges, and as my reading tip, as I said before, for many students, philosophy is mystifying because they have learned to associate any field of study with remembering the currently accepted answers. This is still true. To a set of easily understood questions. This is still true. When they are told that the practice of philosophy produces multiple and conflicting responses to the same questions, students tend to be confused. That statement can absolutely be applied to pretty much anything. You can argue in math that 1 plus 1 does not always equal 2. Not if you add in binary. To continue. How many ask, is anybody supposed to identify the right answers to these great philosophical questions? And how is it possible to be graded fairly on that effort? That remains true in any course. I believe it was Dr. Seuss who said something to the effect of, if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's not going to do very good. When teachers reply that nearly any response might be accepted as long as it is well supported by the arguments, they have done little to ease students' concern. On the other hand, teaching introductory philosophy classes is equally as challenging as taking them. Teachers who ask students to read a well-known piece of philosophical writing often discovers that the students struggle to comprehend. As a consequence, students ask teachers to explain the writings and the ideas of famous philosophers to them. The result is all too familiar. Professors lecture to passive students and audiences, which I'm finding to be true, but we are also, at least in America and in other places of the world, we are also having pandemic issues, and some people are not even able to go to school. Unfortunately, lecturing and listening to lectures have very little to do with learning how to practice and to appreciate philosophy. Philosophy is very important to me. Through philosophy, you can learn anything. In this book, I have tried, and meaning the author, have tried to be sensitive to these concerns. I do not presuppose that philosophical problems are naturally and fascinating to students. Instead, I try to show that the great problems of Western philosophy arise within our ordinary ways of thinking and being. In this way, I hope to help students see why philosophy problems have meaning. Moreover, in the chapter Philosophical Tools, I provide an introduction to the philosophical terminology and mythology that is often presupposed but rarely explicitly described to many students. And in exposition of various problems, I provide many opportunities for readers to think actively on their own about philosophical questions. These food for thought exercises are designed to help students to make students active thinkers. These exercises have grown out of my own expertise of teaching introductory philosophy classes and hopefully will lead to lively discussions and more active learning, and I support this cause. The main challenges in the third edition are the following. First, I have reworked and updated every chapter with an eye to improving the presentation of the various philosophical positions. I'm attempting to do the same. For example, my discussion of free will in Chapter 4 now includes a discussion of the consequence of the argument, as well as an updated version of various compatibilist theories in freedom. In Chapter 7, I've completely revised the presentation of the cosmological argument and the problem of evil. Second, I've included several new graphic representations of philosophical questions. In Chapter 5, for instance, I have given an overview of the various questions that might fall under the problems of our new varied questions that fall under the problems of personal identity. Third, I have updated several food for thought exercises incorporating recent events in the presentation. In Chapter 8, for example, I illustrate the advantages of alternarianism with helps of students that took place in Afghanistan in 2005. Finally, I have done a short and reflection study at the end of each chapter. There is acknowledgments. I would like to thank those readers who have provided me with the helpful feedback of special importance of Chris Bakley, Preston McIver-Ford, Ron Green, Will Hill, I'm sorry if I'm saying these wrong, Basil Smith, Bruce Bettle. Special thanks are also due to Sarah Hawley, Maggie Pelly, Minnie Bennett, Nancy Roberts, and Kate Van from Patience Hall. In addition, several reviewers have provided helpful suggestions. Mimi Masurki, Eastern University, Chills Browers, Sierra College, Jimmy Kaburski, Abion College, David Natern, Chris Bauer, Sierra College, Jeremy Kirkby, Alban College, David McNairn, I'm sorry if I'm saying these wrong, Nova Southern Eastern University, Ella Goffman, Southern Connecticut State University, Robert Thompson, Point Loma Neres University, Walter Riker, University of West Georgia. Last but not least, I would like to thank my wife, Karen, whose support and love has made this book possible. There's a section on here, special support for students and instructors. I'm not logged in. I have already taken this class. The instructional manual includes tests for each chapter. In each test, that this is a valuable right here. For each chapter in the test, valuable resources, provides detailed outlines of listed adjustments and discussions, non-traditional standards. And there are PowerPoint and presentations. I'm not logged in, and I'm not showing the entire website. About the author. That is the author. Nils Raught studied philosophy at the history of the University of Regensburg, Germany. He received an MA degree in philosophy from the University of Colorado in Boulder and a PhD in philosophy from the University of State of Washington in Seattle. He taught at Weber State University in Ogden, Utah, and is currently teaching in Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina. My name is Janelle Fry. I'm a homeschool teacher in Jenner, Ohio. I'm posting this to YouTube. Ultimate questions. I took this class from Owens in Findlay, Ohio. Chapter 1. What is philosophy? Making sense of the world. Although not everyone has an interest in physics, philosophy, geography, or economics, most have a pretty clear idea of what these academic disciplines are about. The same is not true for philosophy. It is quite common to meet educated people who have only a foggy idea of what philosophy is and what philosophers do. Let us therefore begin with a brief explanation of the nature and scope of philosophy. One way to clarify the nature of philosophy is to explore an imaginary scenario. Suppose you are a member of a typical nomadic tribe living, say, 4,000 years ago. Life is tough for your tribe. Most of your time is spent hunting for food and shelter. However, there is also good days, especially during the summers when food is plentiful and temperatures are completely comfortable. So it is that during one of these summer evenings, your 15-year-old daughter sits down next to you, points at the star-filled sky, and says, "I'm amazed at the beauty of the sky. I have a feeling that this whole universe is an incredible place, but looking at these stars also makes me feel very small and insignificant. Tell me, do these stars care about us? Do they take an interest in what we do down here?" At this point, you probably wish that your daughter would be more like the other teenage girls in your tribe who worry not only about who will ask them to dance to the next sacred hunting celebration, but since it's such a fine summer evening, you sit back and try to respond to her questions as well as you can. In order to answer your daughter's questions, you need to provide what one might call a bigger picture view of the universe, which has always involves some kind of story which attempts to make sense of the world and the way in which we live. There are several ways to tell a story. A natural way is the use of mythology, which is cited as term 1. Every culture has developed powerful and mythological stories to make sense of the world. In the Western world, one of the oldest surviving mythologies is Homer's Iliad. I read that when I was 8. Homer's poem for the Battle of Troy not only tells us something about history and cosmology, but also explores the nature of the underworld and of the gods. Mythologies provide an effective way to understand the cosmos and make the roles we humans play within it. So our imaginary stand, the cosmos and the universe we play as humans within it. So our imaginary scenario, you might tell your daughter a mythological story similar to Homer's Iliad or Historiotheology. I'm saying that wrong and I apologize. I usually normally read and not talk out loud. Aside from merely entertaining your daughter with a campfire, you're instilling her with a sense of how the heavens came to be and what interest the gods take in our deeds and decisions. It is, however, apparent that mythological stories leave something to be desired. Imagine that you have a critical-minded daughter. After listening politely to your mythological story, she might very well respond, "Wow, that's a great story. But how do you know that it's actually true?" Here's a food for thought. It might seem as if mythology is a thing of the past. Who would base his or her understanding of the world on simple, palpable stories? Upon closer examination, however, it becomes clear that our understanding of the world is shaped by inventing stories. List some examples of how invented stories still influences and affected our understanding of the world. If you would like to take this class and do this exercise, please feel free. As parents, you probably have several questions. You might either want to make the long tradition of your tribe and try to convince your daughter that your tribe would not have survived for so long if these traditional stories were all bogus, or else you can try to provide additional support to show her story of how you have told her is true. There are several ways to offer additional support. One way consists of the claim that there are answers very close to your gods or God, and that God is revealed the truth of the story to him or her. When mythological stories are combined with divine revelations, mythology has a tendency to turn into religion, which is cited as 2. Religion is the second widely established means through which we can provide a big picture view of the universe. Religion resembles mythology, and most religions contain stories that, at first glance, have the sound and look like of mythological stories. However, religious stories, unlike mythologies, contain a reason that we should believe that they are true. Divine revelation. Divine revelation can take very different forms. It might come as a dream, as it did for the Bible's Abraham, or it might come during meditations, as it did through the Prophet Muhammad in the cave Hira, or it might consist of the discovery of holy sacred texts as occurred with the founder of the Mormon religion, Joseph Smith. No matter which form of divine revelations take, they offer a reason that religious stories are true. Let us go back to our imaginary scenario. Suppose you defend your story with claim that the gods revealed the story of your ancestors. Your daughter might respond to this defense as follows. Oh, I do not doubt that our great ancestors were closer to the gods than we are now. But what makes me curious is this. I recently met a wandering medicine man from a tribe far away. He told me about the religious beliefs that have guided his tribe for centuries. Guess what? Their religious beliefs support completely different stories about the world and gods. What reason do I have to believe that our own religious stories while rejecting those of other tribes? This is referred to as common thought. This response shows that religion as a method of understanding the world is challenged by the fact that not all divine revelations are compatible. When different religions systems come into contact with another, it becomes rather difficult to decide which revelation is more trustworthy. Although some individuals, especially if they have had religious experiences, such as myself, may be convinced that a particular revelation is true, all while misguided, not everybody can justify such strong convictions, which is why I wrote personal. At this point, philosophy enters the picture. It is the third major way of providing a big picture view of reality. The word philosophy, described from the Greek word phila, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. Philosophy, therefore, can be understood as the love of wisdom. This is arguing wisdom versus personal, but this is arguing wisdom versus knowledge. But what does this mean? We can understand the nature of philosophy better if we clarify the relationship among philosophy, mythology, and religion. Philosophy is related to mythology insofar as philosophers also try to provide a comprehensive, bigger picture of reality. Philosophy resembles religion in that philosophers provide reasons so that their picture of reality is true. However, philosophers never appear to divine revelations nor to tradition in order to show that their theories are true. Instead, they appear a power of reason. In a broad sense, philosophy can therefore be understood as an attempt to help the big picture of the universe with the help of reason. How do we make sense of the world? With the help of stories, is through mythology. With the help of revelation, is through religion. With the help of reason, is through philosophy. I want to make an argument here because reasoning is begging the question of knowledge, and knowledge and wisdom, which is covered later on in this book. Let's go back to our imaginary situation. What it would mean to explain to your cosmos to your daughter with the help of reasons. Well, you might say something along the following lines. You have asked me, among other things, whether the stars take an interest in what we're doing. In order to answer this question, we need to clarify the nature of the stars. I believe that stars are balls of fire. Well, you can call that science, can't you? You might not believe me, but the reason I think this is plausible, but here's the reason I think this is a plausible idea. Look at a campfire. It is a source of light. I have walked through many dark nights, and I can tell you that whenever I have seen a light, it has something to do with fire, considering lightning, for example. A tree starts to burn, and it is a kind of fire, so it seems to me that wherever there is a light, there must be fire. Since stars are a source of light, they too must be a kind of fire. Moreover, since fire does not seem to be able to perceive anything, I do not think that the stars are aware of what we're doing. Now, here's a problem. We know, because of the double quantum split theory done in quantum physics, that protons, I believe it's protons, correct me if I'm wrong, wave particles are completely aware and react as waves of light or as they either react in a pattern or a wave, depending on if they're being observed or not. What you have just done is use an argument to defend your belief that stars are not aware of our actions. This is a key element in philosophy. Philosophers not only try to explain the world with the help of claims and also try to defend in stories, but also try to defend their claims with the help of arguments, which is what I've just did. We start to philosophize when we present arguments in defense of our bigger picture view of reality. Well, reality is constantly changing and ever growing. Although our understanding of philosophy is incomplete, it is already possible to point out 4 key elements of philosophical reflection. First, in order to philosophize, we need to know more about arguments. We need to know how to consider arguments and how to evaluate them. We will do this in the next chapter. Second, there's a hypothetical situation I described here that illustrates that philosophy emerges as a response to persistent questioning. If your daughter had not been so reluctant to accept traditional stories, there would not have been any reason to present arguments in defense of your belief. Philosophy, therefore, comes most easily to us when there are critical states of mind questioning whether our standard picture of the universe is really accurate. Which reminds me to try to remember, did we breach the heliosphere yet, or is that not a thing yet? As long as we are absolutely convinced that our beliefs about the world are correct, we feel little to justify them with the help of arguments. Moreover, many people encounter situations in their lives where they begin to question their beliefs and convictions. It's during these times that philosophy emerges most naturally. Food for thought. Philosophy emerges most naturally in situations where the question of whether our ordinary beliefs about the world are really true. The Russian writer Leo Tolstoy, 1825 to 1910, described in his Confessions how he started to question everything in his life. So I have lived, but 5 years ago, very strange began to happen to me. At first I experienced moments of perplexity and the rest of my life, as though I did not know what to do or how to live. I felt lost and became dejected. But this passed, and I went on living as before. These moments of perplexity began to reoccur, and oftener and in the same form. They were always expressed by the same question: what for? What is it for? What does it lead to? And I answered that in my text, or in my essay. In normal everyday life, we do not need to be as reflective as critical as Tolstoy was when he wrote his Confessions. Moreover, it has been suggested that we all become self-doubting and perplexing and contains points in our lives. Is that true? If yes, what kinds of experiences or situations typically undermine our confidence that we understand the world correctly? Third, doing philosophy is a social activity. It requires that we present our ideas and arguments to other people, and they are willing to listen to what others have to say about our claims. Philosophy thus takes a bit of courage. You will discover quickly that that an argument that sounds brilliant to you might strike others as problematic. Being a good philosopher involves listening to questions others have and modifying our ideas at the light of these questions. The British philosopher John Stuart Mill, 1806-1873, wrote that a person does not deserve to be confident in his opinions unless, quote, he has kept his mind open to criticism of his opinions and conduct, because what has been practiced and listened to all that he could stand with against him, end quote. What is important to realize in this context is that somebody who questions your idea does not, in normal circumstances, aim to attack you as a person. Anyone who thinks in a way that becomes defensive and brings quick end to all philosophical dialogue. Philosophy flourishes when people feel comfortable to question each other in an atmosphere of mutual trust and respect. Finally, I hypothesize this conversation with your 15-year-old daughter, and also shows that philosophy has a tendency to lead to a perpetually indifferent answers. I can defend my claims that stars are balls of fire with the help of an argument, but there are also arguments in defense of the claim that stars are unchanging, perfect entities. For example, questions that there are different... I'm sorry, I lost my place. That stars are unchanging, perfect entities. For most complex questions, there are different answers that appear, at least for a while, equally reasonable. There are, of course, also thoroughly misguided answers that can show how to be quite unreasonable. Although philosophy has the goal of producing one of the truthful pictures of the universe, in practice it generates how many different accounts of the world which stand in opposition to each other. It often takes hundreds of years before some arguments are recognized to be mistaken. Progress in philosophy is a slow process. Those of us who like immediate results and absolute certainty tend to be annoyed at philosophical reflections. However, studying philosophies that lead to opposing answers has the benefit of showing us new possibilities. The philosopher, and I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, Bertrand Russell, 1872 to 1970, wrote in this context, philosophy, though unable to tell us with uncertainty what is the true answer to the doubt in which it raises, is able to suggest that many possibilities which enlarge our thoughts and free form from the tyranny of custom. Thus, while diminishing our feeling of uncertainty as to what things are, it generally increases our knowledge as to what might be. It removes somewhat arrogant dogmatism. To those who have traveled to the region of liberating doubt and respects and keeps alive our sense of wonder by showing familiar things in an unfamiliar aspect, which is cited as 6. Philosophy introduces us to multiple ways of seeing the world, thus enriches our perspective, but at the same time exposing us to risks. Once we are able to see many different problems and points of view, we are in danger of losing a firm orientation. Ideas that are central to the ways in which we live our lives can suddenly appear to be shallow conjectures. For this reason, philosophy is often accused of being subversive. It is beneficial to pursue philosophy and risk undermining the most fundamental beliefs to shape our life. This question cannot be answered universally. The studying philosophy can lead to new knowledge and a new outlook on life, but reflecting the most fundamental questions in life can always result in perpetual doubts or reaffirmation of what we have believed since childhood. What study of philosophy will do to you and your beliefs is not clear until you have considered it on your own. The following page gives you an opportunity to do just that. Food for thought. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, 469 to 399 BCE, was famous for wandering the streets of Athens, questioning people until they admitted that they did not know as much as they thought they knew. You might imagine this upset many Athenians, especially those in influential positions. They considered Socrates questioning him to be a danger in the city, and eventually brought charges against him. In 399 BCE, Socrates was condemned to death for corrupting young people and undermining the traditional religious beliefs of the city. Plato's Apology repeatedly presents Socrates' famous defense speech, in which Socrates claims that his questioning was beneficial to the Athenians and that he should have rewarded him instead of condemning him. Socrates claimed that it is better to be aware of one's ignorance than to go on believing dubious and unjustified ideas. He concluded that, quote, the examined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. Do you agree with Socrates? Is questioning one's beliefs a good thing, even if it ends up being perplexed? And my answer is yes. I'm going to end with relationship between science and philosophy. Until next time.